Dave Rubin joins me today, and this is a conversation that I think the conservative movement desperately needs to have. Dave is the host of The Rubin Report, one of the longest running and most influential political talk shows in independent media. Millions of people have watched his interviews with thinkers, politicians, and cultural leaders over the last decade as he's tried to revive something that feels increasingly rare in politics today: open conversation. Dave's story is also personal. He started his career on the left, inside progressive media, before publicly breaking with the movement when he saw it was drifting away from free speech, debate, and classical liberal values. Since then, he's become one of the most recognizable voices in the broader conservative coalition, especially when it comes to defending the First Amendment and pushing back on ideological extremism. And that's why this conversation matters, because right now, it feels like the conservative movement is in the middle of something complicated. Some people call it debate, some call it a realignment. Others are calling it something more serious, a civil war on the right. You've got new factions emerging online, the rise of what some people are calling the woke right, heated battles across social media, arguments over anti-Semitism, foreign policy, and the future direction of conservatism itself. And meanwhile, the algorithm seems to be rewarding the loudest voices, the most extreme takes, and the most divisive narratives. So today we're going to talk about it all. What conservatism actually is, whether the so-called woke right is a real ideological movement or just outrage chasing for clicks, where the moral boundaries of the movement should be, especially when it comes to anti-Semitism and racial nationalism, how younger generations are shaping the future of the right, what America First should mean in a dangerous world with adversaries like Iran, and ultimately, whether this movement is just growing pains for the conservative movement or the beginning of something deeper. Dave Rubin, welcome to We the People.
Gates, it's good to be with you. You pretty much just hit everything I'm interested in these days, so let's do it.
Well, we're going to try to cover some of that. I know you're a man with a lot to say. I'm a follower. You're certainly one of the saner voices within the movement. So I think you have a perspective here that will be refreshing to a lot of people. So let's just sort of frame this at the top. It feels, Dave, like we're sort of in this full-blown civil war on the right. Sort of on one side, we have, the true traditional conservatives. And then we have this thing that I myself am one of the people calling the woke right, who I personally don't consider them members of the right. So this sort of seems like a wild question to be asking, Dave, but I think it's an important one. What is your definition of conservatism today?
Yeah, let me back up for just a second, and I will answer that question. But I think it's important for everybody to understand that what Trump put together with the MAGA coalition was something that was going to be extremely hard to hold together, and that he probably was the only person that could not only put it together, but hold it together. So when you think about what MAGA is, before we talk about, what a conservative is or what a classical liberal is versus progressive, et cetera, MAGA became just, I'm for America. And anyone that has ever been to a Trump rally in the last 10 years understands what that is. Nobody cared if you were black. Nobody cared if you were white. People actually didn't even really care if you had political differences on foreign policy or taxes or anything else. If you fundamentally believed America was good, you were welcome at these rallies. And I remember, even though I did not vote for Trump the first time, I didn't vote for Hillary either. I voted for Gary Johnson, who is the libertarian, and I should be judged accordingly. But shortly after that, when Trump was president, I was coming home on Wilshire in LA, and there was a massive Trump rally. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk in and see what happens. I had no idea what was going to happen. And I got there, and it was the craziest pro-America celebration I could possibly imagine. I've been to July 4th, parties my entire life. I'll be 50 this year. That's a lot of parties that I've been to. I had never seen anything like it. And there were the blacks for Trump and the gays for Trump and the Muslims for Trump and the Jews for Trump. And then there were the people that had none of, I don't like a lot of that identity stuff, but there was just everybody there, and it was a celebration of America. That sort of genesis, that original starting point of what he put together, love America, you're in on this thing, that was going to be tough to hold together because it was going to include people who would then have differences of political opinion. So you'd have your more, let's say, religious conservatives, love America, have a certain religious view. Then you would have your disaffected liberals. That was someone like me who was like, wow, the left has gone completely bananas. can I be in this movement? You would have libertarians that kind of don't like government, so they like that Trump was coming in and talking about the deep state and the swamp and breaking things up. You had people who were never political before, but then suddenly were like, whoa, there's such a cultural craziness around Trump. Then you had all these just kind of curious people that were showing up. So Trump put together something that has never been seen in America ever before. So that gets us to what is a conservative. When you've said the word movement a couple times, the movement. Well, to me, the movement right now that we're trying to preserve is the wide tent MAGA movement that can bring Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK into the same tent that it could have brought, say, a Charlie Kirk and a Mike Johnson, and we can go down the line with whoever, Mike Huckabee or anyone else that's thought of as more traditionally conservative. Look, a conservative, well, the nature of the word conservative has conserve built into it. So you are mostly looking at the past, trying to retain old traditions and saying, hey, our ancestors had to churn through a lot of crap to build our pretty great society. We're in 250th year of this thing. And if we don't look at some of that stuff and realize that those structures and institutions and belief and values were important, well, you're going to throw it all away. The liberal tends to look a little more towards the future and say, where can we find these other places that there are problems and where can we go to fix that? Now the issue here that the left had is that 10 years ago, or let's even go back further for a second, 20, 30, 40 years ago, Democrats were liberals in that well, first off, they didn't hate America. If you think about Bill Clinton, you might disagree with some of his policies as president. Or, you could even think of Hillary Clinton. She's not a radical jihadist, total leftist maniac. They were just more moderates. Chuck Schumer of 20 years ago. They were moderate Democrats, meaning they wanted a little more government. They wanted a little more use of social services. And in many ways, on a lot of things, they sound actually, because they wanted government to do things, they sound like Trump of today. That's the irony of what's going on here. Trump, in many cases, is a moderate Democrat of 20 years ago. The problem is that the modern liberal somehow never knew when to say, okay, we did it. And we did do it. In America, there are quite literally no laws that stop anyone from doing anything based on the color of their skin or their creed or any immutable characteristic. So the liberals won. The liberals got equality for everybody. Now, they didn't get equity for everybody. And when it became equality to equity, which is what the progressives wanted, they want equal results. Well, then that caused the split between the old school liberals, of which I still consider myself, the sort of Bill Maher liberals, and the sort of nutbag progressives. So that is why a guy like Bill Maher has way more in common right now with all of his conservative guests, even though he would prefer not to admit it, than he has in common with any of his lefty guests and never gets invited to, some Democrat party or anything. And he's basically been kicked out of Hollywood. So conservatives are trying to conserve the good things. An old school liberal understands that there are good things in the past and is maybe looking for some other things in the future a little more perceptively, let's say. But those two positions can absolutely hold in a functional society. What a functional society can't have is basically what you've been talking about, and many of us have been talking about for a while. It can't have the desire for equity, which is equal outcomes, because you're going to have to rejigger society and punish people and discriminate and all sorts of stuff, which is what affirmative action is. It's what DEI is, et cetera, et cetera. And it can't have sort of a racial hierarchy, which is now, if we were to move to the woke right part of it, it can't have an identity politics version for them either. And that's why the horseshoe theory is so effective these days. You go far enough one way, you end up the other way. I think that explains why Tucker Carlson these days has way more in common with AOC and Mamdani than he does with Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, so there is so much in there.
I gave you a lot there.
I love it. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think there's an overarching theme of everything you just said. I'm a big tent guy. I favor big tents. You're a big tent guy. You have at the top of your X feed a pinned tweet, a beautiful talk you gave about having a big tent. Bigger armies are more powerful than smaller armies. But everyone in the army needs to be aiming at the same target, or the size of the army doesn't matter. So I'm all for the big tent, but we still have to be careful about who is in that tent. It sort of becomes a quantity versus a quality issue. And I see this woke right that has sort of, it's not that they've snuck in the tent; they've more revealed themselves once they were in the tent. And the common thread of the woke right, they've changed their position on literally everything. I mean, Fuentes was MAGA. Now he's America First, so much so that he's telling people to actually go out and vote for Democrats. You have Candace Owens.
Literally.
Candace Owens was Turning Point's biggest champion, and she's now literally trying to burn Turning Point to the ground, an organization that is probably the most powerful grassroots organization we've ever had in the conservative movement, and maybe solely responsible for getting Donald Trump elected. We can just go down the line here. I mean, Megyn Kelly comes to mind. She was out here just a couple years ago on national TV promoting trans kids, and now she's a hardcore conservative. She goes after Mark Levin every day. He's the most evil thing. This is his war. Dan Bongino, somebody put a video out yesterday of her on Dan Bongino's show 2 years ago saying Mark Levin, she had a crush on Mark Levin. And then, Tucker's the obvious one. Tucker is unrecognizable today from the Tucker Carlson that was on Fox News. I mean, I don't think these people are right or left. I think that they're just click chasers. They're all about the money. They'll do whatever is possible to chase money. Jeremy Boring said it best about Candace Owens. When he hired her, he sort of said, what is your opinion? And she says, well, my opinion is whatever people think. So as much as I want to define what the woke right is, Dave, I'm not sure how to. So to me, it's like I said, it's not left or right. So it's all the things that the left always was: identity politics, conspiracy theories, outrage as a business model. How do you define the woke right? I asked you how you define conservatism. You did a beautiful job there. No surprise.
Yeah.
How do you define the woke right?
Well, I'll do the same sort of answer that I just gave you. Let me back up for a second. Just first note that since you brought up Turning Point and Candace and all that, I introduced Candace to Charlie. I obviously, when I meet my maker one day, I suppose that's one of the ones I'm going to have to answer for. But we were at an event. We were at a David Horowitz event, for David Horowitz Freedom Center event at the Breakers, and I was with Candace. We were on a panel together. I had sort of given her first big break by having her on my show, and Charlie was standing about 20 feet away from us. I remember exactly where we were standing, and she said, "Oh, that's Charlie Kirk. I'd love to meet him." And I introduced the two of them. They chatted for about, I kid you not, about maybe 10 minutes, probably about 8 minutes. I stood on the side just fiddling on my phone. She comes right back up to me. She says, I just got a job with Turning Point. Like, that's how quickly the nature of their relationship began. And then, for years, Charlie, Candace, and I toured together also. We were doing those college things together. And I was, basically the lefty. Candace was interesting because she was sort of former lefty also, obviously because of and it is an identity politics version that the right sort of likes. Because she was black and also a female, that they're not supposed to be conservative, as stupid as that sounds. So there was an element of her. And then Charlie was just the perfect example of what a decent, thoughtful conservative could be. And we had tons and tons of great events and great times together, which it's so hard to think back on. I mean, he's gone now, and she's gone in a whole other way. So how would I define the woke right? Well, I think you explained a lot of it. I would also add that in some sense, it inherently can't be defined because it's being shaped by the internet. It's being shaped by the algorithms. So can I sit here, we could look at Tucker's last 20 shows probably and go, boy, there really is a through line here. He has a psychotic obsession with Jews. And let me be clear, it's not just an obsession with Israel, it is an obsession with Jews. His most recent show is all about how evil Chabad is. Chabad is literally like little Jewish organizations that do charity and help and cook food for people and offer them assistance and bring, teach Torah to people and things of that nature. He's going after Jared and Ivanka for being part of it and implying they want to build the third temple they want to knock down the Al-Aqsa Mosque to build the third temple, which, by the way, you could probably make an argument that Israel would be full within their right to do it because the mosque is on top of the holiest site in Judaism. So which do you think was there first? There's a reason the Jews pray at the wall beneath it. So, I don't want to do a whole history lesson here. So it is hard, I would say, to define exactly what they are, but I would say it's an amalgamation of a bunch of bad ideas around collectivism, which, by the way, there's a video, you've probably seen it, Gates, of Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan from about 6 years ago, talking about leftist collectivism, which we all understand, right? DEI, that type of collectivism. And Jordan says to Rogan, he goes, if you think that's bad, wait till you see what happens on the right as a reaction to it. And in that sense, I'm sympathetic to some of the kids that got caught up in this thing. If you're a 15-year-old kid and you lost a couple of years of your junior high or high school because of COVID, you were told you were bad because you were white and Christian, they discriminate against you trying to get into Harvard because they're going to put in more black and brown kids. By the way, they discriminate against Asians and Jews too. We know that. But if you had a whole system, a whole cultural system that was going against you, you might just latch on to something. And then there are people who are genuinely bad actors. And I would say Candace and Tucker are at the top of that, obviously, who are taking advantage of it, lying constantly. I mean, just this week, Tucker completely made up a story about Mossad agents in Qatar. Qatar freaking says it's not true, and he doesn't even offer a retraction. So it's like, what level of honesty is going on here? And I think we just have to accept, and this is a tough one for guys like you and I to swallow, which is we have to accept we are now in a world where people are just going to lie about everything all the time and build massive audiences doing it. And there's almost no way around that. The mainstream media, I think one of the reasons people are so annoyed at Megyn Kelly is that, Megyn came from mainstream media, but she seemed like she was a little bit better. I remember watching her on Fox and I liked her. I really did. Like when I became friends with Megyn years later, and when she left and she called me out of nowhere to ask me for advice, how did I go independent? She wanted to know how I did this. It was so awesome because I was like, man, I watched her and I've loved her and admired her and everything. We had such high hopes for her and Tucker because it was like, oh, they were in the system, but they were outside ideologically in some sense. And I think what we've learned is that perhaps they needed some of those guardrails. I'm not even defending whatever those guardrails at a cable news organization might be, but maybe some people need them because then they came into our world. We're like Bane, like we were born in it, so like they weren't born in it. They were born somewhere else. They were born in the world of cable TV, which is about rivalries and ratings and everything else. So that's why they will gladly fight with anyone and lie about anyone and everything else. And some people will participate and some won't. And it's fueled by algorithms right now. And by the way, it's also fueled by bots and all sorts of other things. But humans find a way to reset things properly. It's baked into the code somehow. And I would also say, and this is something that if I speak at Jewish groups or pro-Israel things that I say all the time, it's like every Jewish holiday is they tried to kill us. They didn't kill all of us. We're here. Let's eat. That's the story of Hanukkah. That's the story of Passover. That's the story of Purim. That's all the stories. We have had better enemies than these two clowns and Nick Fuentes. Okay. So everything is going to be okay, but it's not the most fun thing in the midst of it. And just one other thing, and then I'll stop, which is I was in Australia a couple of months ago and and right before the Bondi shooting, actually, and I got a lot of questions in my Q&As, and I traveled all over the country about, is there a future for Jews in Australia? And again, this is before the shooting in Sydney. And what I kept saying was, look, if anyone here in this room thinks that Australia will be better off without Jews, you are sorely mistaken, because where Jews are treated well, not even treated well, where Jews are equal as a minority, it's a symptom, not a symptom. I guess you could say symptom. It's a symptom that the society is working, because all Jew means is other. So when you treat your others well, you will treat your system well. But at the end, if Tucker is really trying to dislodge the Jews from America, and he's using Israel as sort of the tool at the moment, or if that's what Candace is trying to do, what do you think America will look like on the other side? It will be a horrible, horrible place, because it will be full of hatefulness and vengefulness and jealousy and bitterness and everything else. So we got a lot of work to do, but I'm bullish on the future. I am.
Hey guys, it's Gates. Thanks for tuning in. I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the show. I hear that all the time when I watch and listen to podcasts. And now that I have a show, I know the difference that it makes. It really does boost us in the algorithm. And the better we do in the algorithm, the better guests we're going to get, the better content we're going to be able to produce. This show is not mine, it's yours. So, in a way, you're helping yourself. So, please like, share, and subscribe. And God bless. Going back to the beginning of your answer, you and Jeremy Boring are on a national apology tour for the creation of Candace Owens. Two of our biggest linchpins in the conservative media movement have created this, but we appreciate your apologies. So going back to some of this, I mean, we're essentially fighting an algorithm, and look, I think it's easy to blabber this nonsense into a microphone, especially when it comes with a nice paycheck attached with it. But I've been watching all this, Dave, and wondering, is this just noise in the media, or will someone be bold enough to take these groyper positions, these racist platforms, and run for office? And here we are. You and I are Florida residents. We're seeing it in Florida right now with gubernatorial candidate James Fishback. I mean, how much of this do you think is people consuming this stuff for entertainment, or actually something that they'll go vote for in office?
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly care about that guy. Byron Donalds is right now by every poll up by like 60% or something ridiculous. I know him fairly well. He's a congressman from Southwest Florida, big Trump guy. I've interviewed him many times. I think he'd be a fine governor. We have the all-star as our current governor. We have the single best politician in the United States, period. Outside of Trump, who's almost beyond politician. He's just a force of nature. But what Ron DeSantis has done to this state is just absolutely extraordinary. Now, will some people jump on this thing so that they can go to events and, create chaos and have memeable moments and get on Rogan and all of those things? Yeah. Is that the future for where Florida's going? No. Is it the future of little pockets here and there? Yeah, it's possible we're going to start getting some more of these Congress people. There's this guy running as a Democrat now who has the Nazi tattoo and who has said some pretty insane things. So the Democrats who have called us all Nazis for years are now backing a guy who quite literally has a Nazi tattoo. So I just think, we're entering a different phase. We're 22, 23 years into sort of internet, social media world. And it has so fundamentally changed everything about being a human and our interactions and how ideas scale and how good things can travel and how bad things can travel. And that's what we're grappling with right now. We're all grappling with it. And, look, again, I am somewhat sympathetic to the person who feels like they've just been bamboozled by the system post-COVID and all the rest of it, and is turning to anything. But what I would say to them is, okay, in an instance like I just pointed out, Tucker 100% fabricated a story about Mossad agents in Qatar. Now you can make a mistake. He said it's a fact. He said it hasn't been reported on, but it's a fact. Well, then Qatar came out and said it's not true. Saudi Arabia said the same thing, and he didn't issue a retraction. So it's up to you. I mean, that's the thing. It's up to people that are watching this to have more discernible taste. And unfortunately, we don't have a great education system in this country that allows people to have those tools, but that's probably where we need to go next to fix all this. We need people to use their minds and make decisions that are proper rather than just being fed things and accepting it.
Gen Z is sort of a passion project for me, Dave. I have 4 kids. They're not Gen Z. I'm not Gen Z. I'm 40. Nick Fuentes continues to call me the bald boomer on his show, but at 40 years old, I'm comfortably.
You're in good company, brother.
I'm a middle-aged millennial at 40 years old, but I'm very passionate about Gen Z because they are the country's succession plan. I mean, they're the generation that's going to raise my 4 kids. They're going to hire my 4 kids. They're going to educate my 4 kids. So historically, conservatism in America, was very clear about rejecting racial nationalism, things like anti-Semitism. Do you worry that some younger factions on the right are abandoning those principles? Because I get caught up with the Fuentes stuff, the Fishback stuff. It's entertaining, okay? And I absorb all sorts of entertainment. But at the end of the day, is it actually going to change my values for the way that I live my life moving forward?
Right. Well, this is one of the great challenges. It's like, I think it's incumbent on good people to stand up when bad things are happening, right? Like we've all seen the meme of, it's like that World War II meme where everybody's doing the Heil Hitler salute and the one guy isn't, and it basically says, be this guy. And everyone thinks that you're that guy. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm that guy. But very few people actually are. We found that out during COVID. Most people just bow to the system. That's how it is. It's interesting related to the movement, as you put it, because if conservatism doesn't put up some walls around it, then how do you conserve anything? You can only conserve things by saying these are the things we're trying to conserve. And by default, that means some things are outside of that. So, it's funny when, now it's about a year ago, maybe a little bit less, when Tucker really started going off the rails. And for months, I didn't say anything public about him. I reached out to him privately several times. It was not my intention to ever go after him publicly. I've been through these games long enough, and I always try to, hash this stuff privately when possible. But when he started going off the rails, suddenly you heard the Groyper side of this thing say, oh, the right's suddenly gatekeeping. They're gatekeeping, as if that's the worst thing you could possibly do. But you have to do that. There's a reason you have a door at your house. There's a reason you might have a fence around your property. There's a reason we have a border so that we are not Mexico. Gatekeeping is what defends good things. No one is saying, in all of the craziness around Candace saying completely bananas, lunatic things. And by the way, tune in tomorrow to her next exciting episode where she'll have more of it. I haven't heard anyone say she should be deplatformed from these things. No one's saying that. They're criticizing her, or they're criticizing Tucker. Even when Tucker had Fuentes on, which really blew this thing up, I didn't see one person, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, or anyone else, say deplatform Tucker or anything else. They were countering his bad ideas with their ideas. It's the very essence of free speech. Yet all of these people were calling it gatekeeping. Meanwhile, they'll do everything they can to destroy Ben Shapiro. So are they gatekeeping? I mean, it's a two-way street here, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the biggest proponent of free speech, and I'm a proponent of free speech for all the obvious reasons. But one of my favorite things about free speech is it allows people to expose their idiocy. So you can actually respond to it and show people that it's idiocy. And if we take their free speech away and cancel them, then, they don't have opportunities to make themselves look foolish, and we don't have opportunities to actually shine a light on the true, the good, and the beautiful. So they actually help us in a way. So I do want to step offline for a moment and look at this, Dave, from sort of a global stage. We don't have to do a deep dive on Iran. There's plenty of that out there. You've done a wonderful job of covering this. But I think a key question is warranted as we sort of wrap our arms around the conservative movement. I'm a big peace through strength guy. I don't want to be in everyone's backyard, but if you turn your back on the entire world, you risk having no allies and only adversaries, everyone sort of teaming up against you. And I do call myself America first, but America first doesn't mean America only. So how should conservatives balance America first instincts with the strategic reality that, instability in places like Iran can reshape global security?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm largely with the way you laid that out philosophically. I mean, peace through strength. You don't get peace by just saying, I'm for peace. I'm for peace. Okay, someone's going to come in and kick the crap out of you and take all of your stuff. I mean, that's how it is. You get peace by hopefully wielding your power effectively. And if the United States is not going to lead the world, someone else is going to. And we know who that is. It is going to be China. And I think for all the reasons that right now the administration via Trump and Rubio and Hegseth are telling us we're going into Iran, and I think the reasons are legitimate and good, and I think we've done an unbelievable job in 5 days of this thing. I mean, their Navy's gone, their military leadership is gone. We took out the entire Supreme Council. There have been air fights that we've taken out their fighters. I mean, we have complete air superiority. As Hegseth said, the two best air forces in the world are now a force multiplier together. I mean, it's extraordinarily brilliant what we've done. That's not to say things can't go haywire. It's not to say that, once the people have to take over the institutions, it's not going to create other problems and everything. But let's leave that there for a second. Philosophically on who is going to lead the world. If it's not us, it's China. And right now, we checked the numbers this morning on my show. 87% of the oil that Iran exports goes to China. Well, that's going to make China a little upset when they realize they've lost the mullahs over there. And 55, I think, % of the oil out of Venezuela, pre us getting rid of Maduro, went to China. Well, we now control that oil. Notice the markets aren't going crazy right now for oil. They're pretty stable because not only is the U.S. drilling again, but now we have access to Venezuelan oil. So a lot of this, I think, is not just that the Iranians wanted to get a bomb and were enriching high levels way above what they would have needed for civilian use. It's not only that their ballistic missile program was increasing. It's not only that they were funding Hamas and Hezbollah. It's not only that we know they had terror proxies all over the world. It's also we are showing China, you're not taking over the world. And we're also showing China right now, by the way, you might want to just ease up on that Taiwan situation because, look, we've got Trump in charge. And, oh, we're also working with this other military that is ridiculously powerful for a tiny country. And just kind of watch out because we need those chips that are being made in Taiwan and all of that stuff. And they suddenly are like, oh, well, we're having an oil problem because Iran's not exporting at this cheap level to us and everything else. So there's huge geopolitical things happening here. But my broad answer to your question basically is I believe in peace through strength. I believe America is a good moral force for the world. It doesn't mean that everything we do is right all the time. But I would also say on top of all of that, Donald Trump deserves our trust at this point. He has been so right and ahead of the curve on virtually everything that to abandon him now or think he just doesn't know what he's doing now, or at the last second, his goal is to nation build all over the Middle East. Iran is firing at 13 nations right now, 13 nations. Only one of them is the tiny Jewish nation. The Arabs and the Muslims are very quickly realizing Israel is not their enemy. Actually, Israel is the one that will protect you guys in a weird way, right? There's a reason that for a piece of paper, Jordan and Israel have been at peace. It's a cold peace, but they've been at peace. Or Egypt would be another good example. It's like Israel doesn't want anything from you. Just leave them alone and you'll be fine. So the entire Middle East is being redrawn right now. And it's just crazy to me that someone like Tucker, when MAGA has done so many good things and Trump has done so many good things, he just doesn't believe America. I think fundamentally he does not believe America is a force for good. I think that's what this really boils down to. It's either that or he thinks that Islam is going to win. He fundamentally thinks that the numbers aren't good, the West will collapse, and he's trying to just get in good with the Islamists. I think it's either one of those two. Or with maybe he's had a little too much nicotine. Made in India.
Oh, damn it, Dave, you stole my line. I had that coming out. It's been very revealing to watch China's reaction to this, or I should say lack of response to this. But
yeah,
two final questions for you. Let's sort of put a bow on this stuff, Dave. What the hell do we do? I mean, how do we get back to the good old days of, say, 2016 or pick the year, or maybe the end of the Obama years when, we sort of rallied together to defeat the actual left? It feels like we're now battling an algorithm. And what do we do, Dave?
Right. Well, what do we do? I would say at the political level, what Trump has to do is keep winning. Like we really need to win this war, win it in a timely fashion. We need to see that the Iranian people can take their country back. And then if that actually happens, and then you get this expansion, it'll be whether it happens immediately or not, but you're going to get a de facto expansion of the Abraham Accords because all these countries are going to be like, Israel's here. It is what it is, right? Like even just in the last 24 hours, the Lebanese government basically said, Hezbollah, you got to stop. So Hezbollah has been basically running, Hezbollah, which is Iran, has basically been running Lebanon. Finally, after 40 years, the Lebanese people are like, no more. And the reason that the Lebanese government's doing it is because they realize, oh, Iran's drying up. We finally have a chance to get rid of these guys. So the entire map is being redrawn. And if Trump gets a massive win here, because you got the Alex Joneses and the Tuckers and Candaces and everybody else saying World War III and it's a nation building, all that stuff. But if Trump proves them wrong again, as he always proves everybody wrong, and then the economy continues to do well, and the big, beautiful bill, a lot of the stuff around that's just kicking in. The trade deals keep coming in well. The Democrats keep going in the direction they're going in, which is complete lunacy. Then there's a chance Trump doesn't lose the midterms. And if the Republicans don't lose the midterms, God only knows what Trump could accomplish in those last 2 years when he knows he's done. It's his last 2 years for sure. And what he could do, keeping the House and the Senate, and with just like a vision of like what his final legacy might be. We genuinely, 250 could be the greatest anniversary for America, but in the history of the world of a renewal of a country. So in that sense, there's a lot to look forward to here. We need some things to fall into place. But I would also say the way you silence the crazy people that we've been talking about is through success. Trump has always said that. What does Trump always say? His greatest revenge will be success. So that's what it will be. You know, remember when we had the last in May, when we had the 12-day war, Alex Jones, this is thermonuclear World War III. Tucker Carlson, we're going to lose 20,000 American lives. They were all proven completely wrong. If that happens again, which I suspect it will, and again, you just never know, right? But if that happens again, it's just like enough people, I think, will start tuning out. They'll just be like, you know what did George W. Bush say? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me. Well, his point is I don't get fooled again. Like, that's where we'll be at.
Yeah, I mean, Trump told us when he was running, he said, you're going to get tired of winning. And all he's done so far is win. I have one final question, but I just want to backtrack a little bit. You sound optimistic about the midterms. And if that's the case, you're definitely in the minority there. And that gives me hope and optimism. Are you optimistic about the midterms?
Look, it's hard to be optimistic in that we know that 70% of the time the incumbent president party loses, right? So the numbers are way stacked against us. We have this fight on the right now, so that doesn't feel great at the moment. But what I would say is the Democrats are completely insane, and more people are waking up to it. When Trump a week ago at the State of the Union asked them to stand up if they're more for the American people or for illegals, and nobody did, like that is Trump 101 on how to win the messaging war. And I think people really do understand that. So it's not. Look, I always consider myself a world-weary optimist. I'm not just like a blind optimist, but I'm world-weary in that I see the way the world is. I want to use whatever tools I have to, if I can angle it a quarter of a percentage in the right direction, that would be enough. I think to do what we do for a living, you have to be an optimist, because otherwise you could never get out of bed and do it, because you're going to get losses all the time, right? Like things usually will get worse, but I just think the Democrats are insane. Trump's doing good work, and we have to trust that he brought in this great cabinet of people to continue to do good things, and pray that people understand that and see that.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this. You know, all movements, Dave, have growing pains and adjustments. Do you think that's what this is, or is this a full-blown transformation that would, we should perhaps even rename? It's not conservatism anymore. When historians look back on this moment in history in conservatism, do you think they'll see this as a fracture that sort of weakened the movement, or as a necessary, let's call it, internal debate that ultimately clarified what conservatism stands for?
Well, I suppose when historians look back, it'll depend on who won, because that'll affect how it'll be written about. But I would say this: I don't think they will look back on this period of time and think that inherently it was conservatism that won. I think they will look at all of the names that I've mentioned here. I mean, the fact that a Kennedy became one of the most important voices in the Republican Party when he was running as a Democrat, just a couple of years ago, or that Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat, was part of this thing. Or they'll look at I hate the word influencer, but the class of whatever, where they brought guys like me and Rogan and other people over who traditionally would have never been on the side of conservatives. And they'll look back and they will go, man, Donald Trump did something unbelievably rare and unique, and perhaps the most important thing that you can do as a politician, which is not make everybody fight over every little issue, but bring them together over the importance of what the country really stands for. And again, that's why, to, I suppose, full circle this thing, that's why it's so twisted and perverted in a sense as to what the Tuckers and the Candaces are doing. The right should be so united right now. Like if Tucker right now was just out there saying, I'm just not into the war. I'm just not into it. I don't see really what Trump is doing. I don't want to put money towards this, or like there's a way you can have an honest critique. For example, Rand Paul he voted with the Democrats when they had the Senate vote yesterday regarding the War Powers Act. Now, Rand Paul, I like a lot. I've had him on my show at least a dozen times. I've met him many more times than that. Always enjoyed talking to him. I don't consider myself a full libertarian, but I think he is a principled human being, and I understand why he didn't vote for it. Now, ironically, John Fetterman, who's the only sane Democrat, he voted with the Republicans, and fortunately, they weren't able to wrestle away the power to instruct war from the president. And there's a series of reasons that would make no sense right now, the least of which being that there are several members of Congress who I think are genuine terror supporters and supporters of the Iranian regime and Hamas and Hezbollah. Obviously, you know who I'm talking about. Sidebar on that for a moment. The point is, there is a way to criticize Trump or any political movement or any decision that would be perfectly logical and reasonable. And I would never be going after Tucker for it. I would invite him on my show to talk about it. I would say, okay, well, do you not think we're a force for good? Do you think that we should just, as the only country that can really do anything in the world or that really does anything, should we let all those Iranians die? And you could make an argument. I just think we should care about Americans and that's it. And I would be perfectly fine with that. They have chosen another path. They have chosen a path of nihilism and hatred and a disgust. It's a fundamental disgust for the country, which is why they have so much in common with the left right now. And I'll make a bold prediction, which is that by 2028, Tucker will probably be a Democrat. I don't mean that necessarily in card-carrying member of the Democrat Party, but look, when he basically only talks about Mamdani in glowing terms. Who does he hate when he brings him on the show? He hates Ted Cruz. He hates Mike Huckabee. And I think we used the word, who does he hate the most? Christian Zionists. So he hates, he's talked about how the Republican Party is useless and blah, blah, blah. You have all the issues with the Republican Party you can come up with. But in light of what the Democrats have become, suck it up. Get on board if you want to save this country. However, my position is that he doesn't want to. He wants to fundamentally change it.
We'll end on that. A bold prediction that I don't think is that bold. But Dave Rubin, man, you're a breath of fresh air. We'll keep watching you on the Rubin Report. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Gates. Well, you're great, and I've enjoyed seeing your rise. And we should do like a hair beard swap and see what happens next time.
I'm in, brother. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, we the people like Gates, Garcia, so that's no excuse.